Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new rules for San Diego gun owners. The city is requiring more safety measures in homes. We take a look at how they're supposed to be followed. Climate change could be accelerating. Researchers in San Diego tell us why they're closely watching melting ice near the North Pole.
What makes a good auditor?
Integrity, a willingness to really not back down.
Holding SANDAG accountable. Meet the woman in charge of making sure the transportation agency is making sound decisions.
People into permanent housing. It's a lot of people.
And a short walk home. Father Joe's Villages talks about an event to benefit homeless families happening this weekend. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Tuesday, July 30th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Gun owners in San Diego will now have to lock up their firearms. The law got final city council approval today. Proponents say the idea is to reduce accidental shootings and suicides. But KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says opponents believe it will do more harm than good.
This is an example of a trigger lock on a handgun. Now, this one requires a key. These will all be required for guns in the city of San Diego now or using a safe. Now, some say that this extra step, though, takes valuable seconds during a crisis situation.
You've got seconds to defend your home, against intruders. Then you're talking about putting in a stressful situation some barrier between you and that.
Supporters of the law, dubbed the Safe Storage of Firearms Ordinance, say it will prevent tragedies that can happen with loaded guns in homes.
We need fewer kids having access to weapons. There's just no doubt about that. And so I think as a parent, it is absolutely incumbent upon parents to keep their firearms in a safe place that is accessible if you need it.
Barbara Starr with the San Diego County Gun Owners Political Action Committee says she's also concerned about the vague wording of the law. It only applies to guns not being carried or in a person's, quote, immediate control.
I like having my firearm in the general area, like if I'm watching TV, but is that under my control or not? Am I in violation of the ordinance or not? There's no way to tell.
KPBS reached out to City Attorney Mara Elliott, who proposed the law. Her office pointed to the ordinance, which says a person has immediate control of a firearm when they, quote, can readily retrieve and use the firearm.
Now, in order to use one of these, you'd have to lock the slide back. You lock the firearm like that.
If a gun owner does not want to use a trigger lock, the law says they can use a locked container.
Now this one, the way it works is you can have a combination. There's 4 buttons here, and you can have a combination of any of the 4.
Some people were also concerned about how the law will be enforced. A spokeswoman for the city attorney says enforcement will likely happen while police are in homes for other calls and they notice an unsecured firearm. Police will not be going to homes solely looking for violators. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A new California law would have kept the Gilroy mass shooter from buying the weapon used in the deadly attack. The age restriction law took effect this year. Police say the shooter bought the military-style rifle in Nevada, where buyers must be 18 years old or older. California, though, the age is now 21, with exceptions for military and law enforcement. 3 people were killed in Sunday's shooting. 12 were wounded. Some of the survivors talk with KPIX reporter John Ramos.
It is the nature of these kind of events that they come without warning, and people are thrust into something they can't possibly be prepared for. That was the case for Justin Bates. The Gilroy native was enjoying the last few minutes of the festival, hanging out with relatives and friends by the family's Shave Ice booth.
So I saw him walking up from the fence line, and then after that I watched him cock his weapon, and after that I saw the flashes and heard the shots.
Justin and his friends Nick McFarland and Sarah Ordaz were sitting together about 15 to 20 feet away when the gunman opened fire.
And then I remember watching him start the gun over here and bring it towards us where we were sitting down at. And I just remember hearing bullets flying past me as I was running. I remember feeling the heat hit my legs right after I got up. And at that point, I was pretty sure that I was hit, and I just knew that I just had to get her and get me the hell out of there.
He was hit multiple times, but miraculously the wounds were all grazes, including one that slid right past his chest. Nick was hit by bullet fragments in his calf, and Sarah was so shocked by the terror, she froze. Justin, who had already begun running, turned back, picked Sarah up, and carried her to safety.
It's nothing you would ever want to see ever in your life, ever. And the fact that we got these guys here, and my whole family's here today, and we're all talking and living, is just absolutely God-given. It's a blessing.
Sarah says her uncle began moving to try to tackle the gunman when he began fumbling with an ammunition clip, but he quickly brought the gun up to his face and said no, and ordered him to run, but for some reason didn't shoot.
You hear about these things, and you see them on TV, and you feel for the families and the victims and, everyone. But when it happens to you in real life, I mean, you're in survival mode. You're just, I gotta get out of here.
As thankful as they may be to have survived, the scars of trauma are still there, and so is a haunting sense of disbelief.
It's just thinking that it could happen right here in our own hometown, and we got hit? Like, what happened? Why? For what?
But they realize that's a question for which there will never be a good answer. In Gilroy, John Ramos, KPIX 5.
In East County, the city of El Cajon has selected a new police chief. Captain Mike Moulton will take over the job September 13th. He's been with the department for 24 years. His background includes work as a detective with SWAT and training new officers. Moulton will replace Chief Jeff Davis, who's retiring. California's largest city is reinstating a ban on sleeping in vehicles overnight. The unanimous vote by the LA City Council drew immediate protest.
Sergeants, I'm going to ask you to please remove the members of the audience who continue to disrupt this meeting.
Police were ordered to remove homeless advocates who were shouting after the vote. The ban applies to residential neighborhoods and any location within 500 feet of a school. A homeless count recently released this summer shows more than 16,000 people are homeless in the LA area. Throughout California, experts have linked the lack of affordable housing to homelessness. Today, the San Diego City Council is debating a major reform to the city's affordable housing policy. A proposal from Council President Georgette Gomez would make developers pay a larger share of the cost to build affordable housing. Critics in the building industry say it would stifle the housing market at a time when the city is already facing a shortage. But Gomez says her proposal would help more low-income families find affordable housing, and that it's a compromise with her critics in the building industry.
I heard them a lot, and this is as best as it gets. Is it perfect? No, it isn't. But is it better than what we currently have? Yes.
The City Council is also taking up another proposal to incentivize housing for middle-income families. Housing is one area where San Diego will grow in the years ahead. Another is transportation. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen recently sat down with SANDAGs' new independent auditor. She's the one responsible for making sure the agency's plans are on track.
Mary Koshmashrab, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
So you were hired in February after a pretty long recruitment process. What have you been up to since you started?
My actual start date was April, so it took a little time for me to get acclimated and move to San Diego from Sacramento, but I've been up to a lot. So part of the responsibilities of an auditor when they take on a new organization, especially one that has not had the position previously, is to really gain an understanding of the organization and perform a risk assessment. So that's really what I've been doing, along with creating some policies that will be coming to the board shortly that will bring some accountability and transparency to the agency. Working on my 2-year audit plan, says where's the risk at that I can see thus far, and really just getting into the habit or the environment and getting to understand it.
Your position was created after SANDAG went through a scandal, and that involved revenue forecasting, but your position now really goes beyond just finances. You're also asked to look at program effectiveness, management structures, really the fundamental issues of this organization. Where do you start?
Absolutely, and that's where the risk assessment comes in. And you're right, it's kind of like a big bundle of, okay, now what, right? And so there's a lot of external auditors that look at SANDAG, and they look at the fiscal aspects of it and pieces of it. And then we do have an internal auditor here at SANDAG that looks at the internal controls and compliance and performance types. But my job really is to look at the riskiest of those areas and fill in the gaps where external auditors and the internal auditors are not looking at or considering. And there are a lot of risk, and as a result of a lot of missed forecast revenues and such, that in itself is a big risk. Moving forward, we have a lot of unknowns, right? We have the 5 big moves that are kind of unknown, and there's an unknown price tag to that. So me and Hassan have been working closely, and needless to say, I'll be on him the whole step of the way to make sure that those projections and forecasts are more accurate and have really considered everything that we possibly can consider, so we're on target a little bit better.
You brought up the 5 big moves. Now, this is SANDAG's framework for the next regional transportation plan, and there's a really strong debate going on right now at the board about what the future of transportation in this county should be. Should SANDAG continue with freeway expansion projects? Should it shift focus and invest more in public transit? Now, that's a policy debate,
right,
but there are also some risks involved with both paths. So tell me, just do you see it as your job to get involved in that debate?
Absolutely, and I'm at every board meeting listening to those debates. I pull up every article that Hassan participates in and that all the board members are participating in, because I want to, again, learn all those perspectives, understand all those perspectives, and then also learning myself, gaining understanding myself. The nice thing is I don't have to get into the politics of it. I don't have to get into the okay, here's what we're going to do with the money of it. It's really just me providing additional information for decision makers, right, and helping them identify the risk and helping them and making recommendations for them to mitigate those risks.
What makes a good auditor?
Integrity, a willingness to really not back down as long as it's supported. So you have to have sufficient evidence. You have to be unbiased. It's not about personal, it's not about an opinion, unless it's a professional opinion, which should be based on facts and evidence. So I think just the willingness to look from both perspectives, that of an auditor, that is management, but also that of the public.
Mary Koshmashrub, thank you so much for speaking with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
San Diego researchers say global warming could happen a lot faster than previously thought. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says a melting Arctic ice cap may explain why.
A recently published scientific paper suggests the shrinking ice pack at the North Pole may hasten the planet's march toward global warming. Scripps researcher Ian Eisenman says losing the reflective properties of the ice would be like adding 1 trillion tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. The entire Industrial Revolution is responsible for 2.4 trillion tons of carbon dioxide. Eisenman says the findings surprised him.
Global warming could happen just as fast as we think, but it could also happen quite a bit faster. And the way it would happen quite a bit faster is if we lose the sea ice a lot faster than our projections.
Eisenman says the future is uncertain because humans can still affect how fast temperatures climb. The findings are published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
I'm meteorologist Paul Williams with your KPBS forecast. As we begin to take a look at what happened a little bit earlier in our day, we see scattered showers continuing to make its way throughout portions of Arizona, going into Utah. Now, as far as the coast is concerned, we started off this morning with some morning cloud cover and a good deal of low-level moisture. But aside from that, we're still staying pretty much dry throughout the region as a whole. A wider view of this, taking a look at our futurecast going into the evening time, we're looking for mid to low-level clouds sliding from across Los Angeles down towards the San Diego area, and down towards the Gulf of California. As we begin to kind of take a look at what's happening here, we're seeing the darting back and forth of scattered showers throughout portions of Arizona and right along the Arizona and California line. In general, we're still going to see that tremendous amount of moisture. It's courtesy of the monsoonal moisture that will still dance right along that border, but we're going to stay relatively dry here for the most part. Dew point temperatures at 71 for us in the San Diego area. As we go throughout the timeline here, we're staying in the 70s throughout a good portion of the overnight period and evening. So we're going to still stay saturated as far as suspended moisture in the atmosphere is concerned. But you'll notice we are over into the 70s in Phoenix, Las Vegas, and up towards Cedar City into the upper 60s. So a tremendous amount of moisture on that side of things. As far as tonight is concerned, we're looking for another round of moisture to build throughout the late night hours. Fog developing late and 65 degrees. For tonight's forecast, San Diego dropping to 65 degrees, Oceanside 65 with increasing moisture and fog developing late there as well. Ramona 60 degrees overnight. Now for Wednesday, we're looking for more in the way of humidity beginning to slide into southern portions of California. Now we're still going to see the heaviest of storms over throughout the Four Corners region, particularly throughout central and going into western portions of Arizona. The Phoenix area, but the monsoonal thunderstorms will continue to be the case for us as you go more so towards the east. So we'll see some scattered showers develop, of course, in Mount Laguna, courtesy of that moisture. Borrego Springs, same situation for us. Ramona, 90 degrees for us. And then as we go into the late week, we're still going to have an influx of showers and thunderstorms along the Four Corners region. We'll stay warm here with some early morning moisture, once again slowing things down for us. For the coast, we're looking at temperatures in the upper 70s to 80s with plenty of sunshine across the board. Inland, we're looking for temperatures to glow from the upper 80s to the 90s by Friday, 91 degrees. And then in the desert, we'll peak at about 108 by Friday. I'm meteorologist Paul Williams, the KPBS forecast.
UCSD Extension is trying out a different way to pay for higher education. KPBS's Annika Colbert says if successful, the program's strategy may help replace federal student loans.
The burden of student loan debt has been in the news a lot, with presidential candidates taking positions on how to grapple with it. Here at UCSD Extension, a program called Income Share Agreements just started. Now, this program has been around since the 1970s, but what's news is that UCSD Extension is using private funds to finance their program. Josh Shapiro is Director of Research and Evaluation at UCSD Extension.
An income share agreement is a contract where the financial portion is paid up front to the student going through the program, and as part of the contract they agree to pay back a portion of their income for a set period of time. The difference between an ISA and a loan is pretty substantial. A loan is debt. It needs to be repaid regardless of student outcomes. An ISA kind of flips this model and can be seen as an investment in an individual where, and this is really important, the repayment is only contingent upon student success.
Meaning if students aren't successful after graduating, they don't repay anything. In this case, success means a student has to make at least $40,000 a year after they finish school. UCSD Extension was approached by San Diego Workforce Partnership earlier this year to make this happen. Together, they received donations from Google, Strata, and the James Irvine Foundation to pool money together to cover student tuition. UCSD Extension selects students based on need and diversity. While this program is not for four-year degrees at UCSD, the results from the pilot will be part of a national research effort on income share agreements with the potential to replace federal student loans. UCSD Extension started with 50 students this month, but they plan to grow to 200 by next year. Reporting from UCSD Extension, I'm Annika Colbert for KPBS News.
Two UCSD parking employees filed a lawsuit today challenging a California law regarding unions. As KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us, they say the law contradicts a recent Supreme Court ruling.
Last summer, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in a case called Janus versus Ask Me, that's the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, that members of public employee unions are not required to pay union dues, even though they would still get the benefit of being in the union. On the same day that decision came down, former California Governor Jerry Brown signed a law that basically says public employers cannot deter or discourage either employees or job applicants from joining or remaining members of the union or authorizing dues or fee deductions to an employee organization. That led two parking staff members at UC San Diego to file a lawsuit saying the state law contradicts the federal law established in the Janus case. Today, a lawyer with the conservative Pacific Legal Foundation, surrounded by those two parking employees, said their suit is intended to force California to follow the Janus decision. Timothy Snowball says Janus dictates that public employers must get employees' consent to opt in to the union.
Public employers like UCSD have to be able to confirm the affirmative consent of employees before any money is taken out of their paychecks. Given that obligation, UCSD and other public employers in the state have a First Amendment obligation to provide that information to their employees.
KPBS legal analyst Dan Eaton says the lawsuit raises an interesting constitutional question that the Janus ruling doesn't necessarily answer.
What obligation the public employer, in this case UCSD, has to tell them about their rights under the Janus decision not to be members of the union anymore?
Eaton also says the question of whether the union can require members to continue paying their dues until their current contract expires is not clear under Janus. KPBS reached out to the local Ask Me office for a comment, but no one answered the phone. John Carroll, KPBS News.
San Diego has one of the largest homeless populations in the nation. It's a persistent problem that's been characterized as a crisis. This weekend, Father Joe's Villages has organized a short walk home. It's a walk to raise money for homeless services. I'm joined now by Deacon Jim Vargas, the president and CEO of Father Joe's.
Thanks for having me, Ebony. It's good to be here with you.
Welcome. So what makes this walk different?
Well, it's the only such walk in San Diego. It's a walk unlike a run, let's say, unlike our 5K, which is held at Balboa Park Thanksgiving morning. So this is a very informal and casual walk. It's very pet-friendly, very kid-friendly, and we invite the whole family to come out. And it's 2K. It's very easily done, but most importantly, it raises awareness here in San Diego of the crisis, as you mentioned, that we have here in San Diego, and that's the homeless crisis, which is very much a shelter and housing crisis. We just don't have enough shelter and housing for those who are on the streets.
Why is it so important to keep this conversation going and at the forefront of people's minds?
Well, because in a great city like ours, right, it's a travesty to have people on the streets suffering. And so it affects them personally, but it also affects the community at large. It affects us economically and otherwise. I mean, tourism is very important to us, right? So it behooves us as a community really to tackle this issue of homelessness, and yet that, and then there's the moral aspect of it. You know, how can we as a society, a great society like ours, really tolerate those who are suffering on the streets without lending a hand to help them up from their situation and help them to become self-sufficient?
And what's the significance of the large door at the finish line of the walk?
It's very symbolic. It's what we want for each and every single one of our clients. We want them to be walking through the threshold of their own doorway in their own apartments and units. And so each participant of the walk on Saturday will end the walk by walking through this large, giant doorway.
Is it housing that is standing in the way or fueling our homeless problem? There's also a tie between homelessness and mental health. Could the homeless population, most of the people who've been impacted by homelessness, could they simply just be given a home and that be the remedy?
Well, the remedy is just not a home. And it's very complex because we human beings are complex. And you bring up a good point, Ebony. There are many reasons why people fall into homelessness. There are economic reasons. I mean, the economy may be doing well, and it is generally. But if you ask those people on the streets how they're feeling about the economy, they're not feeling so great about it, right? So, and because as the economy gets better, as an example, rents go up. And that impacts those who are hanging on by their fingernails, in a sense, and they fall onto the streets. And so economics have a lot to do with it, but also there's mental health issues. I mean, we know that a great portion of those who are on the streets have some level of mental health issues and challenges. And so we at Father Joe's Villages, we have our health center that focuses on behavioral, on primary care, on dental care as well, substance disorder also, and so we have that helps them out. Employment is another aspect of it. So there's so many aspects to Father Joe's Villages, and it's all for the purposes of helping people off the streets and becoming self-sustaining. And of course, yes, housing is a big piece of it, and shelters, just getting them off the streets in the immediacy. But even more importantly, having a place where they can call home of a more permanent nature, because we can have all the shelters in the world, but if we don't have enough of that housing at the back end, then people will fall back onto the streets.
So how can people get involved?
I would recommend go onto the website. It is FJV, that stands for Father Joe's Villages, but it's FJVWalkHome.com or neighbor.org, which is our website itself. But FJVWalkHome.com and sign up. And frankly, if you don't sign up during the week, come on Saturday. We're going to be at Spanish Landing, all right, nicely located, Spanish Landing, and we start at 8 o'clock. So if you can be there at 8 o'clock, and by 10 or so, you can go off on your own and enjoy the rest of San Diego for the rest of the day. But we will have rides and so forth for the kids and games for them. And so we'll make it a fun morning there.
Deacon Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, sexual assault and the military. Accusations against a nominee for a top post. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, can the state force people into shelters? Civil rights groups raise concerns about a new statewide proposal. And on Midday Edition, the debate over whether developers should cover more of the cost of affordable housing. We'll have reaction to the San Diego City Council's vote, which is expected tonight. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/Evening Edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.